Hello again. 30 years ago, the BBC interviewed an old black guy who was caught up in the Liverpool riots after the end of the First World War. This interview has now been spliced into a short piece in which a modern historian offers a horribly distorted version of the events which took place a little over 100 years ago. In the description to this video, you can click on the link and watch this BBC film. It only lasts for 5 minutes or so. She begins by saying that black and Asian people played an absolutely crucial role in supporting Britain in the First World War. This is a neat little lie. There were certainly many Indian soldiers, but only 16,000 black ones from the Caribbean. When you remember there were 4 million white British soldiers, then it's fairly plain that those 16,000 black men could hardly have played an absolutely crucial role. It's a tiny number when looked at in the context of the millions of soldiers who were fighting in Europe at that time. We are then told that when the war ended, there was resentment and anger against black people working in Liverpool, and that some black people were assaulted by angry mobs. This is true enough, except that no mention is made of the fact that very often the black men would work for less than white people, and this caused anger against them more than the colour of their skin did. Some owners of ships preferred to hire black crews for this very reason, and white seamen regarded them as they would anybody else who was a threat to their livelihood. The main aim of this little film, though, is to relate once again the false story that a black man was lynched in the riots. The narrator tells us that Charles Wootton was a 24-year-old seaman from Bermuda and that his boarding house was raided by the police. She says he fled and was chased by an angry white mob. This is completely dishonest, and I'm slightly shocked even knowing how crafty the BBC are. In the thumbnail to this video you can see Charles Wootton. What actually happened was that there had been fighting between some black men and Scandinavian seamen in a pub earlier that day. This was on June the 5th, 1919. Knives and cutthroat razors had been used by both sides. This wasn't a race riot. The black men and the Danes were rivals for any seafaring jobs which might be going. A policeman arrived when the fighting spilled out into the street, and he was promptly knocked unconscious. Other police arrived, and they tried to get hold of the man that they suspected of knocking out the policeman. This was a black guy, and when the black men involved in the fighting retreated to their boarding house, the police chased them. Once inside the house, the black men slammed the door and refused to open it for the police. A crowd gathered, and when more police arrived, things took a turn for the worse. A black man started shooting at the police with a revolver from an upstairs window. 2 officers were hit by bullets. Sergeant Getty was struck in the throat, and a PC Brown was hit in the mouth. No sooner had the shots been fired than somebody bolted from the rear of the building. It was supposed by both the police and the crowds which had gathered that this was the man who had been shooting. Everybody chased him, and trying to escape he fell into the dock and drowned. He couldn't swim. It's true that some people threw stones at him, but this probably didn't contribute to his death. We must bear in mind that when somebody has been firing at a crowd and at police officers, feelings are likely to be running pretty high. By leaving out the shooting, the BBC managed to make this business sound like a lynching, which is of course their intention. I can't help but wonder why the BBC has chosen to release such a dishonest piece of propaganda today. The only reason I can think of is that it's just one more little drop of poison in their campaign to show the English as racist killers.